Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this Wednesday night. We got a lot to discuss today. So I always do my top 10 NBA players right after the season. I mean, I do one before the playoffs. I do one after the playoffs, but it's a special year. It's an Olympic year. And so given the performance, we're not judging this just based off the Olympics. Otherwise, it'd go like LeBron or Steph 1 and 2, then Jokic. The list isn't going to go like that. But the list has shifted because these are basketball games that matter under physical circumstances. In the case of Team USA, who obviously has the majority of players in my top 10, you're looking at a situation where you're being put in situations to play a different role than you're used to playing. So keep that in mind as I do my top 10 players in the NBA in about 30 to 35 minutes from now. CeeDee Lamb, there's more coming from Jerry Jones, and it's not promising. Not to say CeeDee Lamb's not going to get paid, because I think it's more likely than not he probably does, that he is in a Dallas Cowboys uniform in Cleveland in week 1. But interesting information, and really kind of diving into the fact that CeeDee Lamb, take out quarterbacks and just look at strictly offensive players, non-quarterbacks, is the most valuable player in the National Football League. That isn't a quarterback, among receivers, running backs, tight ends, the whole bit. Get into that in 12 minutes on Carving Up the Context. At the end of the show, we're going to be doing something starting today that's going to last the rest of the preseason prior to the regular season beginning 3 weeks from tomorrow. Is that I did this last year, I'll do it again this year. Go division by division and do strengths and weaknesses, the greatest quality of every team and the worst quality, the thing that's going to do them and the reason that they're not going to win the Super Bowl. Today, we're going to do the AFC East and the NFC. So the Eastern divisions, AFC, NFC. Stay tuned for that at the end of the show. That's coming up in about 45 to 50 minutes from now. But first, we got some really unfortunate news out of Minnesota, and it seems to just keep coming. I mean, you had Jordan Addison go down today. I think the Vikings had a defensive player go down with an injury, but the most notable of which is their rookie first-round quarterback, JJ McCarthy, who suffered a meniscus injury yesterday in the last couple of days, and it has been reported. Ian Rappaport reported today, quote, Vikings first-round quarterback JJ McCarthy underwent a full meniscus repair this morning and is out for the 2024 season, sources tell Rappaport and Tom Pelissero. The repair done by Dr. Chris Larson at Twin Cities Orthopedics gives McCarthy the best chance at a long, successful career. So let's start with McCarthy, and then we'll kind of transition to what Minnesota is going to look like in 2024. So for McCarthy, I think this is the smarter option to go. Either way sucks, because on one side of the coin, it's you can come back if you have the meniscus partially repaired. You can come back this season, not quite yourself, and with a further risk of injury down the road in your career. But you could play your rookie season. On the other side of the coin, it's you don't play a snap this year, but there's a greater opportunity for long-term success. It's a full repair of the meniscus. You'll be ready to go, full speed ahead, 2025, moving on beyond that. And hopefully for McCarthy, he has a successful career. I think Minnesota and JJ McCarthy and the doctors in Minneapolis made the right call here. This is a young rookie quarterback. This is a situation, and I wouldn't excuse if a bad franchise did this. The Vikings are not a bad franchise, but if like the Jets or the Browns or a historically poorly run organization, the Raiders, decided to, if they took a quarterback high up in the first round, he's going to be the savior of the franchise, suffered an injury like this, and then just threw him out there. That's what Washington did with RG3, and you saw that blow up. So the Vikings made the right call here. For McCarthy, again, my guess is, in terms of what we were going to see from him this season, I think Darnold, who I'm going to get into later in the segment, was going to be the week 1 starter anyway. But I do think, I'll discuss Minnesota in just a moment, but there was a solid chance that by Halloween to Thanksgiving, somewhere in that time frame, McCarthy makes his first start, and who knows? The Vikings have a lot invested in. They traded draft picks to move it to get JJ McCarthy, valuable draft picks. You would see, it's not out of the realm of possibility you see a scenario in which he plays the last 8 games of the year or so just to get his feet wet. Minnesota probably doesn't make the playoffs in an NFC that got a lot better this offseason. And so then you hopefully take what you can from that 8-game sample size, 8 games-ish sample size, move it into 2025. Now that's not going to be the case. And so McCarthy's going to go into next season with no NFL experience in terms of obviously playing regular season games. And to his credit, and I was skeptical of JJ McCarthy coming out of Michigan. I still am kind of skeptical. Size I don't love. Arm strength I don't love. He's mobile. He can move. And he is with Kevin O'Connell, who I think is a really smart coach. And Minnesota's got a really talented offense. With obviously the best receiver in football, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, you have TJ Hawkinson. They've got a good skill position group in Minnesota. So it's not like he's going to be set up to fail. I just think the physical limitations are going to hold him back from being what the Vikings think he could be, or at least what they're hoping he could be. So that's on McCarthy. To the Vikings. So Minnesota was such a weird team, I thought, coming into this season, because a year ago, they get off to that rough start. I think they started like 1-4. Kirk Cousins then turns on the Jets, goes crazy, has a great game against Chicago, shocks everybody. Kirk Cousins never plays well on Monday night, right? Well, wrong. Not in that game last year against the Niners when they were in the midst of their midseason skid. Dominated San Francisco on that great defense Monday night game. Then was playing well in Green Bay, and bam, his Achilles went out. And Minnesota, it was a carousel of quarterbacks. They were trying Nick Mullins. They were trying my man, the Pastronaut, Joshua Dobbs. They were throwing everybody they could out there just to see if something would work. And they kind of stumbled at the end of the year and obviously missed the playoffs. Because the options at quarterback were going to be Darnold and we're going to be potentially at the end of the season a JJ McCarthy, I just didn't see a path. As talented as Minnesota is offensively and frankly on the defensive side of the ball, listen, Brian Flores is running your defense. Ask the Dolphins, ask the Patriots, who he contributed with Belichick. You're going to be pretty good on that side of the ball. Minnesota was an objectively awful defense 2 years ago. He turned around into a middle-of-the-pack defense. Brian Flores is a great coach. Excuse me, I hope to see him get a head coaching opportunity, a year from now or 2 years from now, because I think he's really good. So for Minnesota, what should their expectations be? Or what would be a satisfying season for them? It depends on where they set their hopes and dreams. Obviously, they're not a contender. That goes without saying. They're obviously not going to. I think the NFC North, there's a legit argument to be made that the NFC North is the toughest division in football. Detroit I think, has as good of a shot as anybody to win the NFC. Green Bay, hey, you can make the case given how they played at the end of last season. They walloped Dallas. Jordan Love was amazing the second half of the year, and they almost beat San Francisco on the road as a 7 seed. So Green Bay's got momentum. We'll see if they take on, despite the fact that Matt LaFleur apparently becomes physically ill at the thought of a number 1 receiver. I don't know. And they have the Chicago Bears, with one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen out of a draft in Caleb Williams, with an improved offense, with a well-coached defense. Who knows? Maybe they win the division. I didn't think Minnesota had the talent, certainly at the quarterback position, to go against a Goff, a Love, or a Caleb in order to put themselves in that conversation. But if Minnesota's in a spot, and this is to me where the optimism could come in for JJ McCarthy, and this is where Sam Darnold enters the conversation. If Minnesota wins 7, 8 games, middle of the first round of the draft, because Minnesota's too good to tank, and they're in that middle of the first round of the draft next year, maybe they could take another wide receiver. Maybe they can bolster the defense. We'll see. Again, their offensive line is getting better. It's actually one of the, I'd say, top half of the league. Maybe could bolster that. Minnesota's got a solid roster, and I think, again, O'Connell's a really, really good coach. Minnesota could go into 2025 saying, hey, if we can turn around Sam Darnold, who's to say we can't work with JJ McCarthy? We could show you, and the reason I say that is we could show you what Sam Darnold is throughout his career. All stats provided by our friends at StatMuse. All graphics provided by Alfred Parsar Jr. My man, go and put up Darnold's career. It's bad. It's bad. Since coming into the NFL in 2018, he's second to last in pass yards per game, second to last in record. He's 14 games under 500. Dead last in completion percentage under 60%. Dead last in touchdown to interception ratio, barely over 1-to-1. And then in terms of passer rating, it's 78. It's not good. It's dead last. Sam Darnold has not been a good quarterback. And I loved him out of the 2018 draft. I was dead wrong on him. Great arm, but really reckless and not terribly accurate. And mobility is hit and miss, depending on the game, depending on the defense. But if Sam Darnold, who showed flashes 2 years ago in Carolina, we could show you Sam Darnold's Panthers numbers. He played 6 games for the Carolina Panthers, and he wasn't awful. Actually, he was decent. 6 games, 190 pass yards per game. That's not great, but 4-2 record. You'll take that. Completes 58% of his passes that year in Carolina. Last year in Carolina, not great. You'd like that to be higher. 7-3 touchdown to interception. That's good. A little over 2-to-1. And a passer rating of 92. That's shockingly high for Sam Darnold. If he can replicate that, which I don't think that's out of the question with the skill position group and with the coaching staff, if he can do that in Carolina with bad weapons and an interim coach, who say he can't do that with Minnesota? Now, I get the defense is tough. I'm sorry, the division's tough, but it's not because of the defenses. Chicago's got a really good defense. We'll see if they continue that. Jalen Johnson's a great corner. Montez Sweat, they got some ballers there. But if you look at the Detroit Lions, what's their weakness? What held them back from going to the Super Bowl last year? It was their defense. What held the Packers back from being a 9-win team, or from being, say, a 10-11 win team and being a 9-win team? It was their defense. It was bad in the regular season. So if those trends are at least in the same ballpark from where they were in 2023, Sam Darnold could put up numbers. Sam Darnold could be a productive player. You could say the fact that Minnesota, I think, is playing a third-place schedule, fourth-place schedule. So they're in a situation where they're not going to be playing the Titans of the NFL, not the Tennessee Titans, but the Giants of the NFL, so to speak. And so, yeah, if for Minnesota, I think the goal needs to be this. Defensively, continue the trend you saw at the end of last year. They got off to a rough start, but Brian Flores did what all great coaches do. That's get their side of the ball right. Minnesota's defense played much better at the end of the season. And offensively, it's, well, if we can get out of Sam Darnold at least a sliver, if not replicate the guy that he was his last year in Carolina, which was, I mean, better than what we've normally seen from Sam Darnold, with lesser circumstances in Carolina than he has now in Minnesota, well, we can win 8 games. Maybe we'll have some members like myself in the media fooled, like, hey, watch out for the Vikings. They can make the playoffs. And then they kind of fizzle out at the end of the year because they're not really supposed to make the playoffs with Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback in this loaded NFC, certainly the division that they're in. If they can be able to get the best out of Sam Darnold, they can convince themselves, and by the way, put up a fair argument, we can get the most out of JJ McCarthy because he's an unknown commodity. We kind of know what Sam Darnold is. He was a bust. He was a disaster with the Jets. As I always say about the New York Jets, it's the place where young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. They ruin everybody. And not to say some of that wasn't on Darnold. Of course it was, but that was a match made in football hell there. So I think that, to me, is what Minnesota should be focused on. Keep the defense, improved. They got, obviously, Danielle Hunter. They got Darrisaw. They got some good players in that defense. If they can continue the trends that they had at the end of last year, and then offensively get 2022 Sam Darnold, feel pretty good coming into 2025. They've got to see what the rest of the division does, but the NFC North is brutal, but Minnesota's not exactly a position to tank. Let's put it that way. So I'm curious to see what we get out of the Vikings because I like what they have on paper. They just obviously don't have that dude at quarterback. Imagine if they did, though. Seriously, imagine if they had a guy to the caliber of a Love, of a Goff, of what I think Caleb's going to be. This division would be crazy. But nonetheless, tough loss for the Vikings. Sucks for JJ McCarthy. I will give them a lot of credit, though. Again, I have to imagine this decision came from the doctors primarily and the organization as well, collaborating with that. But the fact they said, we're not going to be impulsive. We're not going to be desperate. Listen, the Vikings have never won a Super Bowl, but they are not. We don't view them as like, oh, God, they don't know what the heck they're doing. Never. Matter of fact, you can make a case the Vikings have been kind of cursed at quarterback, certainly over the last decade. Teddy Bridgewater. Remember Teddy Bridgewater got the Vikings? I shouldn't say he got the Vikings. Adrian Peterson got the Vikings to the playoffs in 2015, and Teddy Bridgewater's pretty good that year. So you go into 2016, if you're a Vikings fan, like, oh, here we go, Teddy 2 gloves. Oh, shoot, he blows his ACL. And Sam Bradford fizzled out. And Kirk Cousins won 1 playoff game. It's like, it's I'm not going to make it out to be as if they've dealt with the struggle at that position like that the Browns and the Jets, teams like that have dealt with, but it has not been smooth sailing if you're a Vikings fan at that quarterback position, which we know is the most valuable position, arguably, in professional sports. So, sucks for JJ, but kudos to him kudos rather to the doctors for making the right call. Think about long-term success. Don't, what is it? I heard the phrase, and it sounds really cliche. I think you would see it on like a billboard on an interstate. Is that the reason people, I think Emmanuel Acho might have said this, that the reason people, number one reason people aren't successful is because, they're not willing to put in the work. They'll sacrifice what they want most for what they want now. Like, that's the number one reason people aren't successful. And the Vikings said, no, we're going to think about the long term. 2024, guys, we're not winning the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, we're just not. So kudos to them for making that call. Okay. So this is normally carving up the context is not this early in the show, but it's a different format. We've got AFC East and NFC East weaknesses at the end, obviously, with Bryson's best 10 NBA players there in the middle. Carving up the context is a segment we do every Wednesday. Essentially, all it is if there's a story, if there's anything going on in the world, sports or otherwise, that there's a narrative being painted about it, or be it false or true, and there's a lot of people discussing it. I try to peel back the layers. I try and look just a little bit deeper into the specifics of it. And it's so funny. I just got a Twitter notification that's going to help me for this segment. So let's just go ahead and get into it. We're talking about the Dallas Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb and why he is the most valuable non-quarterback offensive player in professional football. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we're going to be talking about CeeDee Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys, and this report literally came down from Clarence Hill, who's a very trusted source in Dallas. Shout out to Clarence Hill, does a great job. And this came in literally a minute ago, right as I'm doing this segment, so thank you, Clarence Hill, that CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys are reportedly not close to a deal, but the Cowboys are optimistic that it will get done. Now, I kind of take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because of the fact that they've also said the same thing about Dak, and it sounds like they are nowhere near getting a contract done with Rain Dakota Prescott. But let's talk about CeeDee Lamb, though, because I was thinking about this today, and I did a CeeDee Lamb segment last week, and I don't think we give him enough credit, which is why it's so confusing why the Cowboys won't pay him. I don't think we give CeeDee Lamb enough credit for being the most valuable non-quarterback in the NFL on the offensive side of the football. Because he is. At least he was last year, and I have no reason to believe that won't be the case this year. Well, what about Christian McCaffrey? Hey, very valuable. Listen, I think McCaffrey is the second best player in football. Love the guy. But if God forbid, that biggest knock on whatever, that Christian McCaffrey goes down, well, they still have Debo, and they still have George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings is an impact player, and Kyle Shanahan makes basically every running back work. It's just the fact that now he's got McCaffrey, it looks unstoppable. The Niners' offense will still be very productive, albeit not amazing, if Christian McCaffrey went down. Not Tyreek Hill. Well, they have Jalen Waddle. They have Raheem Mostert. They have a solid offensive line. They have a smart offensive coach. Tua's capable. They have pieces. Well, what if Jamar Chase went down? Yeah, that's what T. Higgins is there for, at least for this year. Joe Burrow's the second best QB in the league in my mind. Certainly a clear top 5. But in Dallas, Texas, it's a little bit of a different story. CeeDee Lamb goes down, Dallas is screwed. There's no other way to put it. They are screwed. And we could show you based on data and evidence from a year ago. So I was looking at this, and I did a deep dive on Friday's show, but it ties in really better to today's show. Because what is CeeDee Lamb in terms of a statistical output a year ago? How does it compare to other Cowboys receivers? Well, we could show you. Put up this graphic right now. 7 more 100-yard games than the next closest player on Dallas. 988 yards. Folks, almost 1,000 yards more than the next closest player on the Dallas Cowboys. 64 catches more than the next closest player on the Dallas Cowboys. This is from 2023, by the way. 79 targets more than the next closest player on the Dallas Cowboys. You ask, Bryson, what does this mean to me? Well, I'll show you exactly what it means to you. Let's go and put up this next graphic. What's the discrepancy? Where does that rank among NFL teams? There you see it right there. 7 more 100-yard games of the next closest player. That's the second biggest discrepancy in the National Football League to Detroit and Amon-Ra St. Brown. 988 yards more than the next closest player. Biggest discrepancy in the league last year. 64 catches more than the next closest Cowboy. That's the biggest discrepancy in the NFL last year. And finally, 79 targets more than the next closest player on the Dallas Cowboys. That, as you might have imagined and guessed, is the biggest discrepancy in the National Football League. Pretty simple. CeeDee Lamb's amazing, and the Cowboys receivers are mid on their best days. They had one Cowboys player that went over 100 yards for a single game last year. It was Brandon Cooks. He went for 100 yards a year ago. I think it was against the Giants. That's it. Jake Ferguson's never gone for 100 yards a year ago. You think about guys, again, Brandon Cooks only went for that once. Jalen Tolbert darn sure didn't go for over 100 yards. You keep looking down, Tony Pollard, if they thought he'd be a catch the ball in the backfield guy, nowhere near 100 yards catching the football. So, in other words, Dallas' offense is really limited and really reliant on Dak Prescott and on CeeDee Lamb. And when they're not clicking, as we saw in that Green Bay playoff game, that offense goes kaput because they don't have a running game as well to back them up. But also, too, because I was thinking about, sort of the, if we compared CeeDee Lamb to one of the better receivers in the NFL, one of the more productive receivers in the NFL, let's go and put up blind resume. I've grown very fond of blind resumes in 2024. I don't know why. I've used them for Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I've used those for and against certain players. Let's put up the CeeDee Lamb blind resume, okay? Let's go and put this up, okay? So CeeDee is better than who? Who's CeeDee Lamb better than? Because those numbers across the board, other than total touchdowns, CeeDee Lamb is better than player X. So you see CeeDee Lamb on the left, you see mystery player on the right. And again, CeeDee Lamb right there, 600 more yards. Let's do some quick math. That's 41 more catches, 40 more targets. 1.1 more yards per catch, 12 more 20-plus yard catches, and tied 14 touchdowns to 14 touchdowns. You say, Bryson, who is this receiver? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's go and put up the blind resume. Who is this football player? Oh, it's literally every single receiver on the Cowboys not named CeeDee Lamb combined. CeeDee Lamb put up better numbers by himself than the entire Dallas Cowboys receiving core minus CeeDee Lamb put together. In other words, if he's not there, they're an objectively bad offense. Now, I'm glad, because I watch the media coverage, of course, and there's a lot of people in the media who I have immense respect for. I'm glad it's starting to catch on. A couple things that I've been first on that's starting to catch on a little bit is the fact the Cowboys are cheap. I saw L. Duncan, who does a great job on Sports Center, was on First Take this morning, laid out almost identical stats to what I laid out 2 weeks ago in terms of the Cowboys being dead last in cash spent, in terms of the fact that the Cowboys are the only team in the NFL who pays their quarterback $40 million to have zero players on their roster, aside from the quarterback, making $20 million or more per year this season. Kudos, L. Duncan. Shout out to you. Laid out that same stat. Also, if I can compound on that, I saw this recently today, put it on my Instagram. I thought it was so interesting. Is the fact that the Cleveland Browns, what the Cleveland Browns doing? Holy cow, they gave Deshaun that money. What are they doing? The Cleveland Browns, this is interesting. They have 13 players in their roster making over $10 million per year. Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Joe Bitonio, Jack Conklin, Dalvin Tomlinson, Wyatt Teller, David Njoku, Grant Delpit, Zadarius Smith, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Every single one of those players make over $10 million, but the Cowboys can't find a way to pay Dak. Oh, again, can I reemphasize? Dead last in the NFL in cash spent. So the media's caught up to me on that the Cowboys are really cheap. Like Cincinnati Bengals cheap. And also the simple fact that, and I've been saying this since 2022, after Amari Cooper was traded. If you take out CeeDee Lamb, the Cowboys receiving core is bottom 5 in football. Jake Ferguson's a pretty good tight end. One could argue maybe even above average. But he's a good player. He's nowhere near like a Pro Bowl caliber guy. You think about somebody like a Jalen Tolbert. He's done what since coming in the NFL? What's Jalen Tolbert done? Brandon Cooks. Oh, Brandon Cooks, he takes top of the defense. Yeah, he did like in 2017. Now he's on a 6th team, if memory serves me correctly. He's coming into his 11th year in the NFL. And again, there's a reason he's been moved as many times as he's been moved. He is not a number 1 receiver, and these days I'm not sure he's quite a number 2 receiver. If he is, he's not a very good one. Not to mention the Cowboys' running game is led by Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle, with an offensive line that just lost Tyron Smith in the offseason, and their starting center, Tyler Biadasz. In other words, the Cowboys' offense isn't very good, but because they have a elite quarterback, can we stop arguing this about Dak? He was top 5, top 3 in virtually every category that matters. I mean, yards, touchdown interception ratio, touchdowns total, passer rating, QBR, the whole bit. accuracy, completion percentage, tight window throws, if we want to look at next-gen analytics. Dak's outstanding and CeeDee Lamb's outstanding. The fact that Dallas Cowboys have paid neither goes to the fact that Jerry Jones is, I think there's a number of factors that A, is cheap. That's undeniable. And the fact that he has, I don't know if he just wants to control the offseason headlines. That could be it. As I've always said about Jerry Jones would rather never see a Super Bowl for the rest of his life than the Cowboys to ever be irrelevant. I mean, who's the big press conference in Dallas after their big playoff loss? Is it the quarterback, Dak Prescott? No, he's kind of vanilla. It doesn't give us really interesting responses. Is it Mike McCarthy? No, same story. Is it CeeDee Lamb or Micah Parsons? Well, not Lamb and not Parsons, although if you listen to Micah's podcast, you probably get a more truthful answer. No, it's the owner / general manager, Jerry Jones, who commands the attention and the adoration of the press in Dallas. Because he's interesting, because he gives you a good quote, because he gives shows like mine stuff to talk about. But in terms of running a football business, Dallas is as poorly run as there is in professional sports, I would argue. When it comes to in terms of marketing, Dallas is the best. It's no wonder why they're valued, I saw the other day, at $10 billion. Obviously the most valuable franchise in the NFL and in American sports and in worldwide team professional sports. But CeeDee Lamb's value to the Cowboys is unparalleled, might be somewhat strong, but I'm leaning that way. Again, McCaffrey's valuable, no question. Tyreek Hill, Trent Wood, these guys are all valuable. If you take them off their teams, they're at least still viable on their side of the ball. You take CeeDee Lamb off the Cowboys, they're awful. They're like the Patriots offensively. Outside of Jake Ferguson, who I like. Jake Ferguson's a good tight end. That's about it. Running game's objectively bottom half of the league. Offensive line absolutely got worse by losing Tyron Smith and Tyler Biotish, 2 of your 5 starters. I'd argue 2 of your 3 best offensive linemen a season ago. And oh, by the way, your receiving corps consists of Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert and like a 6th-round pick, and that's basically it in Dallas. I think I know what Jerry's plan is with Dak. Sabotage Dak, make Dak look bad so you don't have to pay him and he can walk. CeeDee Lamb, I don't know what the plan is. If the plan is to franchise tag him, you're just going to pay him even more money down the road. The fact of the matter is that they could have paid CeeDee Lamb a year ago. They didn't. I get that to a degree. Let's see you replicate the same 2022 production again. Well, not only did CeeDee Lamb replicate it, he got better. He improved it. Was the second best receiver in football to Tyreek Hill in 2023. It was great. All-pro guy. What's the holdup? When the receiver market was $30 million at the start of the offseason, now it's no lower than $35 million. What are you doing? Goes to show you, and I'll keep reiterating it until I'm blue in the face, that Dallas had 2 options after that disastrous loss to Green Bay. Either, okay, we can't go any further with the roster that we have. We need to just blow this thing up and start from scratch. Could have done that. You could have justified it. Or, gosh, we saw flashes in the regular season. We saw what Dak did and CeeDee Lamb, and we just need a couple more pieces, kind of like the Rams did. Rams were a good team in 2020. Added some pieces, won the Super Bowl the next year. Be active at the trade deadline and go after in free agency, and you could absolutely justify that as well. Instead, they sat in their hands and did absolutely positively nothing. So, this week's edition of Carving Up the Context. The Cowboys mismanagement of the cap, the Cowboys' inability to sign one of the best players at his position, no lower than the 3rd best player at his position in the National Football League, and especially when you consider his immense value to the offense. Never seen anything like it. Not gonna lie. Can you imagine if Jamar Chase gets paid before CeeDee Lamb? If Jamar Chase sets the market despite being drafted a year after CeeDee Lamb, that would be something. I mean, Devontae Smith, albeit less money, got paid before CeeDee Lamb, and he was drafted a year after CeeDee. That would be something else. I'm not going to lie. My. Patrick Brown. It's been CeeDee or bust the last 2 seasons. As I said previously, preparing for the worst-case scenario. Listen, I don't think you need to prepare for worst-case scenario as far as CeeDee Lamb. Not CeeDee Lamb, because like they're going to let Dak walk. I think most Cowboys fans have accepted it. I not only have accepted it, I'm openly promoting it, have been since 2020. They're not going to let CeeDee and Dak walk, surely, right? Now, CeeDee Lamb is still in his mid-20s, may not even be in his prime yet. If he is, he's at the very beginning of his prime. I don't know. And again, they can franchise tag him in 25. They can franchise him again in 26. 27 would be unreasonable in terms of the money that he'd make then for 1 year. You might as well just sign him to the long-term deal and spread the money out. Wow, this is a story that will, well, not the CeeDee Lamb story is going to have a beginning, middle, and end. So is Dak's. And by the way, you just wait. You just wait till the Micah Parsons stuff a year from now. Like when Dallas loses Dak and go from being pretty good to awful in a span of a few months, and Dak goes on to the Pittsburgh Steelers and is a Super Bowl contender, the only thing we'll have to talk about in Dallas is, is this new quarterback going to work? And why the heck are they not signing Micah Parsons? Just wait. A year from now, I'm going to be having this exact same discussion about number 11 with the Dallas Cowboys. It is truly remarkable. There's certain franchises we don't give enough credit for how poorly run they are. I think Dallas is, by the way, starting to finally get that credit. And I do feel like, I'm not a guy who likes to take credit necessarily for narrative shifts in the national media. Frankly, I just don't have that kind of influence right now. I hope to someday, but I just don't right now. But it is somewhat satisfying when talking point's the wrong way to put it, but when a take that you've had for years, plural, is finally becoming mainstream. That is fun. I'm not gonna lie to you. And by the way, and I don't even want to promote it like I'm some genius. I think the Cowboys are a pretty easy team to read. I mean, this isn't like some inside baseball. Like I talked to some people behind the scenes. No, I just kind of took it on face value because that's how Jerry presents it. He doesn't do much behind the scenes. I mean, whatever's happened with the Cowboys behind the scenes, you're pretty aware of. Because it happens to all play out in the public eye because they're a reality show masquerading as a football team. Which, to their credit, their home set, AT&T Stadium, is gorgeous, and the Star might be even better. So I'll give Jerry Jones credit there. But beyond that, in terms of running a football team, he is as bad as they come. Transition to the NBA. So the Olympics were held, obviously. By the way, I did see briefly, I saw real quick, looks like we have a comment here. Patrick, $35 million would cost Jerry $40 million for CeeDee Lamb. I'm already calling it ahead of time. $40 million. I don't know if it'll be 40, because here's the thing, Patrick. I think CeeDee is going to get paid before the start of the season. I don't get why Dallas is dragging us out. I think at the 11th hour, by the way, just like with Ezekiel Elliott. Remember, Zeke's not going to get paid, and Zeke's holding out, and then days before the Cowboys opening game, bam, Ezekiel Elliott's done. If that ended up being a bad deal, I do not think that'll be the case with Lamb, because I think he's awesome. I mean, look, Jerry's been worked before, so $40 million, I'm certainly not going to dismiss it and say it's off the table. I don't think the number will be that high. I don't see it getting higher, assuming Jamar Chase doesn't get paid. Now, if Jamar Chase gets paid, Patrick, then $40 million is absolutely on the table. Absolutely on the table. If he gets signed before Jamar, which I'm not sure that's going to happen, let's just assume for the sake of argument he does, between 35 37. When you could have gotten him in March for no more than $32 million. But it's Jerry Jones we're talking about. And when it comes to football decisions, he's, again, like I said, bad as they come. Again, transition to the NBA, though. So, again, the Olympics were held, and I did want to say this because I'm kicking myself for not mentioning this on the show Monday, because I'm usually, stories like this matter to me, and I'm not doing a segment on this. I'm just bringing this up. The fact that the Team USA gold medal game against France, men's basketball game, Team USA versus France, got 20 million viewers, and it peaked at 22 million viewers between 5 and 5:15 Eastern, which is when Steph Curry went in his one-man run, and people were watching it like crazy. Highest rating since 1996, almost 30 years ago, for a men's final. Y'all boycotters are really dropping the ball. Holy moly. I'm not watching the Olympics. Yes, you are. That aside, so again, I always do my top 10 players in the NBA before the playoffs and right after the finals. Sometimes I'll do it if there's nothing to talk about in March. mid to late February. Super Bowl's over. NFL offseason hasn't really begun yet. I'll sometimes do my top 10 players then. But my two lists I focus on: pre-playoffs, post-playoffs. Who are the 10 best players in basketball? And because we had the Olympics, which we only have once every 4 years, I'm like, well, I've seen more basketball. These guys play more games that matter. In the case of a lot of the guys on this, games that matter more than any game they played last year, if you take out like Boston Celtics players and Indiana Pacers guys, stuff like that, Minnesota Timberwolves. So I put together a list again. And so Bryce's best 10, my top 10 players in the NBA, if we can go and get the background music going. I think this. Here we go. We're going to start at number 10. The 10th best player in the National Basketball Association is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. SGA of the Oklahoma City Thunder is the 10th best player in the NBA, and here's why. So this is a guy who led the NBA in scoring a year ago. Came in second in the NBA scoring a year ago. Was second in the MVP voting ahead of Luka, behind Jokic. This is a guy who's ascending. This is a guy who's in his mid-20s, is leading an Oklahoma City team that, frankly, I think I have as the favorite coming out of the West next year. I'm not saying I'm picking him to win the West, but the favorite in my mind to win the Western Conference, make the 25 NBA Finals. It's a guy who could score off the dribble. His three-pointer is good, not terribly consistent. He can improve that side of his that facet of his game. But again, getting to the basket, mid-range is lethal. Was really Canada's only bright spot during the Olympics. Jamal Murray was bad. I love Jamal Murray, but he was bad. And he who shall not be named, who somehow landed an $80 million contract, he was even worse. So for Canada, it was SGA, and it was SGA. And in the playoffs for Oklahoma City, a little bit of the same. I like Oklahoma City's young talent. I expect SGA to continue to build on the momentum he had of last season. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the 10th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 9, staying where he was at on the list the last time I did it, it is Ant-Man Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, the 9th best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So for one of Team USA's victories, I believe against Puerto Rico, he led them in scoring. This is a guy who's coming off the season averaging 26 a game, a season in which he swept his idol in the first round, Kevin Durant, coming off a second-round series against the world champion, yes, Noah Lyles, world champion, defending champion, Denver Nuggets, down 3-2, and in Game 7, he leads the comeback down 20 in Denver, Colorado to win that Game 7. Now, they flame out against the Dallas Mavericks. Lost a lot of close games. Luka and Kyrie were brilliant in that conference finals. But this is a guy who is just completed his 4th year in the league. He's 22 years old. He's nowhere near his prime and was one of the best players. I think one of the 5 best players on Team USA, on a team that had legends littered all over the roster. I'd argue, make a strong case, Ant was one of the 5 best players on that team. Again, the Jordan comparisons are not fair to the kid. Let Anthony Edwards be Anthony Edwards. Let him be his own man. Can we do that for a new rule? Can Edwards be his own guy? I was skeptical about him coming out of the draft in Georgia. Dead wrong on that. Kid's awesome. Kid's absolutely one of the 10 best players in basketball. And I feel like there's a very good shot that by 2028, he's the leader for Team USA. He's our best player, post LeBron, Steph, and KD, assuming those 3 guys aren't competing at that point to lead the squad, hopefully, to a 6th straight gold medal. Anthony Edwards is the 9th best player in the National Basketball Association. Down a spot from where he was the last time I made the list, even though he was solid for Team USA, it is Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, the 8th best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So, again, I shouldn't say the only reason, the biggest reason he's this low, only MVP in history to never get out of the second round. Like, that matters. He's lost 3 Game 7s to Toronto in 2019, to Atlanta in 2021. Atlanta, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, really? 2023, obviously, to the Boston Celtics after once holding a 3-2 lead in that series with Game 6 on his own floor. But that aside, which does not come down the list, this guy is one of the best scorers in the league. He's led the league in scoring 2 times in his career. The aforementioned MVP. This is a guy who on Team USA was huge in us. He wasn't very good in the gold medal game against France, but in the game against Jokic, I mean, this is the guy, the Jokic Embiid back and forth. Jokic is, I think, universally at this point agreed upon, not only is the best big in the league, but potentially the best player in the league, in the world. Embiid outplayed Jokic in the 4th quarter of that game. Now, he wasn't guarding Nikola, but he was hitting, when Serbia was up 11, up 13, looked to be kind of pulling away a little bit. Embiid's hitting big mid-range shots. He had a big baseline dunk, I think, in the third quarter of that game. Was good defensively. So we saw Joel Embiid. We saw him play the best big game of his career, bar none. Now, if you're a Sixers fan with the roster you got now, with Maxey, Paul George, great coach and Nick Nurse, with guys like Kelly Oubre with him as well, you hope that this experience, this motivation coming off of playing big in one of Team USA's biggest games, second biggest game, that can translate into greater playoff success, and hopefully that he's healthy at that point, because all we have to judge and beat off of is not healthy playoffs, in which he hasn't been very good when other stars, when healthy or when unhealthy, have been played some of their best games. So Joel Embiid, the 8th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 7, down a couple spots from where he was last time I made this list, it is defending world champion, yes, Noah Lyles, Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, the 7th best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So what I don't want to do is overreact to a bad, really 2-month stretch. If you look at the finals, in which he wasn't very good up until Game 5, and you look at the Team USA, when I've argued he was absolutely, unequivocally the worst player on the team. Not say he's the worst in terms of rankings, as you see on this list. I've got him above Halliburton, Derek White, and Drew Holiday, and Bam, and others. But this is a guy who shot under 40%, did not make a single three-pointer, despite averaging the 6th most minutes on Team USA. That said, this is still a guy who was able to put together a season in which he made his 3rd straight first-team All-NBA. This is the guy who's the best player. Respect to Jaylen Brown. Should have been the Olympic team. But this is a guy who's the best player on the Boston Celtics in 2024. There's no question about it. We hit a lot of big clutch shots over the course of Boston's close wins throughout the postseason, particularly against the Indiana Pacers. So listen, this is a guy who can get a shot whenever he wants, is a could improve a little bit on the defensive side of the floor. Again, defending world champion. What can you say to him? Next step for Tatum? MVP, finals MVP, somewhere in that ballpark, to really kind of cement himself as one of the 5 best players of the league. So I don't want to overreact to the Olympics, but I think it'd be disingenuous if I didn't knock him down a peg for his lackluster performance, and that's being kind, in the 24 Olympics. Jason Tatum, the 7th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 6, up, I think, 4 spots from where he was last time, it is the Slim Reaper, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is the 6th best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. Watching Kevin Durant was, I think, validation for what I've said about him in the past. And I did, listen, he got swept for the 2nd time in 3 years. I did knock him down a peg because of Phoenix's playoff finish, even though I didn't really buy into Phoenix all year long, is the fact that KD has been open about this, and to his credit, it's not like we're having to guess on this. KD said up front, yeah, I'm not a leader. That's just not, and I think by and large, leadership, most cases, you either have it or you don't. Some people are just natural leaders. KD's not. KD is an all-time great talent playing basketball at the highest level, is the most gifted scorer I've ever seen in my life. I think in NBA history, is one of the most efficient players ever. Man's about to turn 36 years old and was, at points, the best or 2nd best or 3rd best player for Team USA. He had arguably the biggest shot of the game against Serbia. We're up 2 points with about 30 seconds left. He hits the shot to put us up 4 and put the game out of reach for Jokic and the Serbians. Again, offensively, the man can do whatever the heck he wants. He's going into year 18. He can do whatever he wants offensively, save for intense physicality, which by and large he doesn't see, at least the way they call it in the NBA, even though he dealt with physicality in FIBA and was really good. And so, listen, when I hear, dream team this, dream team that, what the heck are they going to do to stop Kevin Durant? Love Michael Jordan, all-time great defensive player. Hey, he wasn't stopping Kevin Durant. Chuck wasn't stopping Kevin Durant. Ewing, nobody was stopping Kevin Wayne Durant. And frankly, no one around the world could. So you give him the leaders, LeBron and Steph. We saw it with Steph and Golden State, obviously. LeBron and Steph on Team USA. He can just play his game, get buckets, have fun, play video games, and go at haters on Twitter. I love Kevin Durant as a guy, love him as a player. He's the 6th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 5, up a spot from where he was last time on the list. I can't believe that I'm saying this. He's an old man. You know what I'm talking about. The king, LeBron James, is the 5th best player in the National Basketball Association. And here's why. So he led Team USA outside of scoring, which he was down just a little bit from Steph Curry. Led Team USA in basically every category that mattered. Rebounds, assists, field goal percentage. He was great throughout the tournament. And again, that to me is the strongest case for LeBron being the MVP of the Olympics. But this is a guy who, I know people probably I sound like a broken record. People get tired of me saying this. He's coming off a season which he averaged 25, 8, and 7, shooting over 50% for the field, over 40% from three, which was a career high. He shouldn't be doing this, and yet he is. And this, to me, the Olympics, if you want to factor Anthony Davis in, is as bad of a look on the Lakers as you can imagine. You're telling me the best defensive player in Team USA and the best player start to finish on Team USA, start to finish, they play for the Lakers, and they won one playoff game. Poor coaching. Austin Reeves, love the kid, but he wouldn't start for the Boston Celtics. Now, that might be an extreme example because they're the best roster in basketball. He would not start for the Boston Celtics. And they're asking LeBron, hey, you're about to turn like 40 and stuff, and you're the greatest old player of all time. Greatest player of all time as well. Carry us past the world champion Denver Nuggets with Anthony Davis, yes, and a terrible coach, Darvin Ham, and basically nothing after that. Love Rui Hachimura, he's the guy. What he did in the Olympics was simply phenomenal. He was the leader, Captain America, every single game. Team USA would come around LeBron. What's LeBron got to say? What's the emotional, inspirational message he's going to give us before our next game? And most importantly, he was Captain America in the fact that he delivered the dopest picture in the history of the Olympics. Sailing across the Seine River in Paris, France. He's got the big old American flag. The rain is coming down on our great American athletes. You got all these Team USA men and women waving their flags, and there's LeBron. Statuesque standing in front, holding that big old glory, representing the red, white, and blue. Oh, man. Not join the military after seeing that picture. LeBron James, Captain L'America, is the 5th best player in the National Basketball Association. I thought I was going to have him at number 4 for most of the Olympics, but after seeing what this man did in the last 2 games, I'm not moving him a spot from where he was in the list last time. You know who I'm talking about. Wardell Stephen Curry the second. Steph Curry is the 4th best player still in the National Basketball Association. Here's why. Throughout the first 4 games of Team USA, Steph wasn't playing very well. He was averaging 7 points a game, shooting like 20-something% from 3, just was not getting a rhythm. And then Serbia happened. And he dropped 36 points and 9 3-pointers, which is 1 short of an Olympic record. The greatest individual scoring game in Team USA history. Melo scored more, 37 back in 2012. If you take his 37 points away from Team USA in 2012, they still would have won that game by 46 points. So Steph absolutely goes above Melo. Respect to Melo, all-time great Olympian. But Steph Curry, greatest individual scoring performance in men's Olympic basketball history. And then in the gold medal game, Steph's playing well. He had 12 points and was getting... And then the last 3 minutes, he hits the little jab step 3, and then he hits a step back pump fake 3, and then he hits another pump back pump fake step back 3 off an assist from Devin Booker, and then he hits the shot literally heard around the world over 2 French guys. Ice the game for Team USA. He's a 4-time MVP, 4-time NBA champion, 2-time league MVP, the greatest shooter, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, that God ever created, the man who changed the way the game is played, coached, and analyzed. And it's another reminder to my Golden State Warriors. Get the man an all-star teammate, please. It's somebody in the Olympics. Steph Curry. Nobody like him, folks. 4th best player in the National Basketball Association. At number 3, there's only the number 2 and 3 was different on the list last time. It's changed for one reason and one reason only. At number 3, coming off fresh off a finals appearance, it is Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is the 3rd best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So Luka, the only reason he dropped below Giannis, spoiler alert, is the fact that Giannis took a Greece team to the Olympics, past the qualifiers, and Luka could not do that with Serbia. Now, was anybody, Slovenia. Now, is anybody and their mother thinking Slovenia was going to do anything crazy in the Olympics? No. Was anybody and their mother thinking that Greece was going to do something in the Olympics? Of course not. But it does matter that the fact that Giannis got them there and Luka did not. Now, I still love Luka Doncic. And again, his finals performance was underwhelming. It wasn't bad. It wasn't as bad as some people give it credit. But it was underwhelming. He didn't shoot a great percentage from the field, even though scoring, rebound, and assist numbers were good. Again, the key. If the Mavericks want to replicate, if not enhance the success that they had a year ago, which the only way they can enhance it is by winning the championship, they have to go to a more team-oriented, moving the basketball style of offense, where Luka is the focal point, but isn't the offense entirely and then Kyrie bails him out a couple times with some ridiculous shots. You add Klay Thompson in the offseason, one of the greatest shooters of all time, could still, while he's limited from where he used to be because of the injuries and age, Klay Thompson can still shoot the basketball with the best of them. If Luka can get him involved, if the Mavericks can change their offense into one that is conducive for everybody to get the best out of everybody on the floor, oh, watch out for the Mavericks in the Western Conference. They could be right back in the finals. But Luka, again, I would have voted him second on my MVP ballot to Jokic a year ago. I thought he was great, particularly in the second half of the season. But Luka Doncic, fresh off his first finals appearance. Hey, who says he can't get to another one? I think he's got to get at least one MVP because the guy ahead of him has two. I am talking about the second best player in the NBA, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis, the second best player in the National Basketball Association. And here's why. So again, the thing that changed in the last 2 months, Giannis got his team in the Olympics, Luka did not. So again, we're talking about a guy who is the best two-way player in the league. He can give you 30 points on well over 60% shooting on any given night. And by the way, just chip in 12, 13 rebounds. And he's great defensively, one of the best shot blockers. He's got a DPOY on his resume, 2 league MVPs, and then Milwaukee to a pretty impressive run to winning the finals in 2021, given who the second and final opponents were in that playoffs. Listen, this is a guy who is, I've said it over and over and over again, the most dominant player within 5 feet of the basket since Shaquille O'Neal. Again, great at the defensive side of the floor. It'd be really nice if he had a jump shot, but I think I've kind of given up on that at this point. Giannis is going into year 12, which is hard to believe. But year 12, the jump shot may come later in his career when the athleticism wanes if he wants to continue to stay amongst some of the best players in the league. I don't think Milwaukee's a well-constructed roster. I don't expect him to do much this year. But listen, this is a guy who's still, let's not forget what Giannis is at his best. This is the guy who dropped 50 in a championship closing game back in 2021. So the guy's awesome. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the second best player in the NBA. And at number 1, same as it was a year ago, same as it was obviously 2 months ago, it is the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, the best player in the National Basketball Association, and here's why. So I had him at number 1 even after the playoffs, even despite the fact that Denver blew that 3-2 lead to Minnesota and, of course, blew the 20-point second-half lead to the Timberwolves in round 2. The reason I kept him there is because, A, Jokic was still great in that Game 7 against the Timberwolves. I think he had a triple-double, scored well over 30, was very efficient, just wasn't great in the defensive side of the floor. In the Olympics, did you watch Jokic? He was great, by his standards at least, defensively. And Serbia meddled. Not Canada, who had a better roster. Not Germany, who had a better roster. Serbia got the bronze medal and came, so close to knocking off the most talented roster in the history of Team USA, the 2024 Avengers men's team. What he did in that game was, he slowed down a little bit in the fourth quarter when LeBron was guarding him. But the course of that game, that Olympics, there was a case that if you take out Team USA, Jokic was absolutely the most valuable player in the Olympics. Serbia, yes, they had Bogdanovic. They certainly had some other pieces. They had that one guy, number 30, I forget his name, who should be in the NBA if he isn't already. That Serbia team was really talented, but they were not as talented as Canada, or as talented as Germany. But what he did in that tournament, and by the way, he's got 3 league MVPs. That's pretty big. Nikola Jokic, the best player still in the National Basketball Association. Before I check the comments, let's go back over the list. From 10-1, and again, this list will not change until next season because there won't be any meaningful basketball games played between now and opening night in October. But from 10-1, we will start from 10-1. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, followed by Anthony Edwards, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and still at number 1, it is the Joker, Nikola Jokic. Let's look at the comments here. What do we got? Jeff says, oh, great, I didn't miss the show. I appreciate you, Jeff. Let's see. Jeff says, and we talk about my guy Embiid. What a wonderful day. Listen, again, Embiid is awesome. I've never denied Embiid's incredibly talented. I've never denied the fact that he's as unstoppable a threat inside as we've seen. Probably number 2, or really probably number 3 to Jokic and Giannis at number 1 on that list. Again, never been out of the second round as a league MVP. Never been done before. And again, Olympics, he had a horrible start to the Olympics. Was good in the middle, great against Serbia, and not great against France. I don't know if it's the French crowd combined with the fact that they were playing France who wanted Embiid that got in his head a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, that's where I got Joel Embiid at number 8 right now. Philip, asking the $1 million question. Here's a fun question. If everyone was in their prime, who's winning the game? USA 2024 or 1992? If everybody's in their prime, and the reason that's an important distinction, Bird was not in his prime, Magic was not in his prime. Magic was a year post-retirement, and Bird was just shot. Magic could still play. Bird could not. Bird had a lot of back issues at the end of his career that really hindered the end of his time with the Boston Celtics. So in their prime's a different conversation. Because here's the thing. Jordan was smack dab in the middle of his prime. That was the best of Jordan. It was 1991-92 area. Go back and check the numbers, as well as the team success. Bird in his peak would have been great in today. Bird's one of those guys would have been great in any era. He could shoot, he could pass, he could defend, pretty well. And was a tough guy, leader, the whole bit. Bird would have worked. Magic would have worked. Tall point guard. Again, his inability to shoot the basketball consistently would have hurt him against this Team USA team. But nonetheless, he could have, certainly been an impactful guy. Charles Barkley, prime of his career, production-wise, he was the best player on that 92 Dream Team. People don't talk about that. Chris Mullin, Admiral David Robinson was something different. David Robinson is one of my all-time favorite players that played before I was born. David Robinson, John Stockton was on that squad. Who else am I missing? Christian Laettner. We can go and put that to the side. I think it's safe to say Halliburton's a little bit better than Christian Laettner. Scottie Pippen was on that team. So I think I've mostly Ewing. I think I've mostly covered everybody. Here's the problem, though. The three best players for Team USA: Bron, Steph, KD. I think those are the three best players. Respect to Ant-Man, AD. I thought those were the three best guys. KD's not in his prime, and he's averaging 27 a game. KD in his prime was a 30-point-per-game guy, a 4-time scoring champion, a league MVP, and when he was with the Golden State Warriors, got shots as easily as anybody has in NBA history. LeBron James, crazy as it sounds, isn't in his prime. The man made 8 straight finals, 2 of which with awful Cleveland Cavaliers teams. 2015, really in the finals is when they were bad in 2015 because they had Kyrie, then they didn't have Kyrie because of the injury. And then 2018, they were bad throughout. The roster was bad throughout the season. Bron got him to the finals. And by the way, took one of the most loaded rosters ever. Got swept, but took him to the wire in game 1 when he dropped, 51 points. And in game 3 when he played well in that game as well. And finally, Steph Curry. Steph is still great. Steph is at the end of his prime. Do y'all remember prime Steph Curry? From like 2016 to 23? Do y'all remember the fact that in 2016, Steph led the league in scoring, led the league in steals, shattered, and I mean shattered, his own record. He had the record for three-pointers made in the season, 286. You know how many threes he hit in 2016? 402. That record still has not been broken. 50, 40, 90 as a 6'3" guy, which is unheard of, especially on a guy shooting that kind of volume. And then you think about 2021 to Steph. 21, I won't go through the numbers, but he had the greatest shooting month in history in April of 21. And in 22, I mean, look back on that Warriors team. I look back on that Warriors team as a Warriors fan. It's becoming more miraculous by the day that Steph won that team a championship and played the best series of his life against the Boston Celtics in the finals, against the Defensive Player of the Year. So the Bird Magic thing, well, what if Bird Magic were in their prime? I would counter, what if LeBron, Steph, and KD were right in the heart of their prime? By the way, Ant isn't in his yet. Anthony Edwards is not in his prime yet. Halliburton. I mean, Halliburton's probably the worst player ranking-wise on Team USA. But Halliburton's not in his prime yet. So, yes, you want the answer to that question, Philip? 24. The Avengers. That's the answer to that question. Patrick's riding the money. LeBron's greatness has been robbed by the incompetence of Rob Pelinka. The Olympics validated it. Yes, indeed. He also says Steph's great performance in our gold medal game, to be honest, it felt like the 2008 game versus Spain. It wasn't until Kobe said, I got this. Steph channeled his inner Mamba and took it home. Gosh darn right, Patrick Brown. No, listen, Kobe was amazing in the fourth quarter 08 against Spain. What Steph did in that last 3 minutes was like it was ridiculous. It was like a spiritual experience almost. It just almost had no voice by the end. By the way, last thing on the Steph thing, and I'll move to your next comment, Patrick. I saw there was a tweet, and it said that that now people who aren't Warriors fans see why Warriors fans are so darn obnoxious. And I'm like, yeah, that's why. Because we have that guy. Trust me, we won't be as loud. We'll still support the team. I'll still be a Warriors fan the rest of my life, but won't be as annoying as when that guy retires. And hopefully, knock on wood as hard as possible, pray to the high heavens that Steph Curry plays the rest of his days in basketball as a Golden State Warrior. But there you go. Patrick, Tyrese Halliburton posting pics of him in LeBron's high school jersey and Katie's Team USA jersey. The ageless wonder is well respected by this generation of players. It no question it is. And Patrick, this is interesting. Keyword, skill set matters. This era has more advanced skill set versus the 92 Dream Team. It does, but again, the most skilled team doesn't always win. So I don't think it's huge, Patrick, no question. But that to me isn't the deciding factor, is the skill set. I love Shaq, I love Charles, I love all the former players, love those guys. But when I keep hearing, oh, this team has no killer will. Did you watch the last 2 games? Did you watch what Steph Curry did against France? That's not killer will. If that's not killer will, then there's never been a player that's exuded killer will, including Kobe and Jordan, in the history of the game. Like, that's an absurd take. We've seen KD go, that little snarl, the slim read. We've seen KD go one-man wrecking crew. Obviously, we've seen LeBron do it as well. So I hear, oh, this team doesn't have that dog in them. Huh? Games are you watching? What careers have you been watching? These guys are awesome. So, and again, the whole Dream Team was blowing everybody out. Yeah, there was like 8 NBA players that were on Team USA in 1992. There was like 60. I said 42. Jason Tempt, who has a great basketball podcast, by the way, said it was like somewhere in the ballpark of 60 as opposed to 8 in 1992. Like there's levels to this. Let's not sit up here and act like that this is a situation where Team USA, oh, well, if the 92 Dream Team blew it everybody, they'd have rocked Team USA in 24. Come on, man. Again, guys are close to their primes now because their primes have lasted longer because they've taken great care of their bodies. But also the fact that, there's you say they don't have that dog in them. Seemed to be there. By the way, Jordan had that in him. Jordan took exceptional care of his body until he didn't. And when Jordan didn't, he was still really good. He was a 20-point-per-game guy last year in Washington, but obviously the impact was not the same. I'm trying to get these graphics loaded for our next segment, which is going to be the strengths and weaknesses of 8 teams in the NFL. And those 8 teams, in case you're wondering, are AFC and NFC East teams. So we can get that loaded. Because I did this last year, going over the strengths and weaknesses of every single team in the National Football League prior to the season. And crazy as this may sound, but 3 weeks from tomorrow is opening night. Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs. And by the way, college football starts like a couple Saturdays from now. Thank you, Jesus. I cannot wait. Yeah, this is excited as I've ever been for college football season. The NFL certainly not too far behind. So, do we have the graphics? Make sure we're getting them loaded right now because sometimes the streaming platform I use can be limiting in terms of the number of graphics they'll let me put on. Get this, hold on just a moment here. Make sure we get this right. There we go. Get those loaded. Okay, so again, there's no such thing as, certainly in a salary cap league, there's no such thing as a perfect team. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, and it probably never will exist, certainly in the salary cap era. But I did want to talk about the fact that we've got a lot of teams that aren't perfect. They have strengths. They have weaknesses. We know the whole story. And I wanted to sort of go over one by one. For some reason, this one graphic will not load. I'll get it on here like literally right now, and then we can get going on this segment because I do not want to miss out on discussing this. Is it loaded? There. Okay, boom, it's loaded. All right, so we're going to start. So we're going to, the next few shows leading up to the football season, we're going to go division by division. Today we're doing 2, AFC East, NFC East, and the biggest strengths and weakness of every team. Some are contenders. Some are going to draft in the top 5 in the NFL, draft in 25. So without further ado, we'll start AFC. We'll start. The biggest strength of the Buffalo Bills is O-line and run game are the best Josh Allen has ever had. And it continues from last season, and a lot of credit there goes to Joe Brady. Joe Brady took over for Ken Dorsey mid-season. Buffalo committed more to running the football with James Cook. Listen, Josh has dealt with some below-average offensive lines through his career. This is the best he's had. Pro Football Focus has it high in the top 10 of their rankings list. They played well at the end of the year. Josh had a lot of time to throw the football toward the end of the season. He had the support of a run game, and that's going to be key for Buffalo, given the fact that they lost Stephon Diggs. We'll see what Keon Coleman is. I love their tight end combo with Kincaid and Knox. And listen, I like Shaquille Shakir probably more than most. We'll see what he becomes. I think he can work with Josh Allen. But that's going to be key. Again, a lot of folks are really low on Buffalo this year. I don't think they're like a Super Bowl threat. They're a threat to the Chiefs, which for some reason people think they were last year. But listen, the running game is going to be the biggest strength of the squad moving forward, because defensively, they're kind of up and down. They could be great one day and below average the next. So giving their top 5 quarterback help is going to be key for them. The biggest weakness the Buffalo Bills has to do with their quarterback as well. Grievous errors by Josh Allen in key situations. That's going to do the Buffalo Bills in over the course of the season. I counted 5 games. Some of them were wins, like against the Giants in Week 6 and against the Dolphins in Week 18, where there's a late game mistake by Josh Allen, where it's not like, oh, May screwed up, bad read. It's WTF are you doing plays. The 4-pick game against the Jets in Week 1. You can talk about, again, the game against the Giants. He made one throw that ended up getting completed that do not throw that pass ever in the NFL. I think it was to Diggs or Shakir, I forget which, over the middle of the field for the against the Giants. The game against Miami, he was fumbling. He was throwing the ball across his body, throwing picks in the end zone. Like, what the blank are you doing, Josh Allen? Multiple games where Josh Allen would struggle toward the end of games and make grievous errors in late game situations. He's awesome. I just don't think he can cut out the mistakes 6 years in his career, now 7 years going on in his career. So there's the strength and weakness of the Buffalo Bills. The biggest strength of the Miami Dolphins is clever coach and fastest weapons in the league. I love Mike McDaniel. I was skeptical about him when he first got hired. Listen, I made the mistake of paying too much to the aesthetic of the outward appearance. My bad. Would never do that again with the coach because the guy's really smart. Tua went from... is the guy even a starter too? Oh, he just got the richest contract in NFL history. Now, do I think he's worth that type of money? No, but he's still a very productive player in large part because of Mike McDaniel, and in large part because of the fact Tyreek Hill, I mean, his name is literally the cheetah. He can fly. Jalen Waddle can move. We know, obviously, Raheem Mostert is fast. Miami's got an A-chan as well. They got a very, very fast offense. The lack of physicality tends to do Miami in toward the end of seasons. But in terms of if the game's going to be a track meet, the Dolphins are going to beat you on that. And again, they have a smart head coach to run everything offensively. So that's the biggest strength of the Dolphins. Biggest weakness of the Dolphins is, I've talked about this for a while, weather under 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Because Tua has never won a game in those conditions. Dead serious. He's never won a game. Last I checked, he was like 0-6 games under... I think it was under like 47 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark. Like, if it's under 50 degrees, Tua's not going to play very well. You're not going to win very often. And as we know, in the AFC, unless the Dolphins get the 1 seed and home field runs through South Beach, you got to go to Buffalo, which is really cold, and Kansas City, and Cincinnati, and Baltimore, and Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. Very cold cities. That's going to do the Dolphins as the time goes on. That's their biggest weakness. 2, the New York Football Jets, who people love. Their biggest strength is improved O-line and weapons. Listen, they went out and got Tyron Smith. That was huge. Ty Smith isn't the player now that he used to be, but he's still easily one of the best left tackles in the league. And no question, is miles better than what they had a year ago. Listen, the Elijah Vera Tucker experiment has officially failed. That didn't work at all for the Jets. Tyron Smith is not just a great replacement. The guy's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer protecting Aaron Rodgers. That's huge. Weapons-wise, listen, you have Garrett Wilson, and you had Mike Williams. Now, the question with Mike Williams is health. I don't think he's played, I don't think he's had 1,000 yards in I forget how many seasons, 2, 3, 4 seasons. So, listen, for the Jets, offensively, they're a better team, particularly in their biggest weakness, which they were a year ago, offensive line, than they were a season ago. But the biggest weakness of the Jets also has to do with the offense is the fact that they just might have the worst offensive coordinator in the National Football League in Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, across the board, if you look at Nathaniel Hackett as a play caller, take out 2017 against Jacksonville when I think they were 4th in offense. It's a lot of 26s and 17s, and it was really, I mean, Denver might have been like 30th when he was their head coach calling plays. Hackett's a bad offensive coordinator. Now, I don't know. They tried to replace him during the offseason. I don't know if that trend is going to continue into this season. Listen, just because he's buddies with Aaron and likes to throw darts in the quarterback room with Aaron doesn't mean he's good at calling the plays at the NFL level. Look at Buffalo, look at Jacksonville, look at Denver, look at the Jets. He's not very good at calling plays. That's the biggest weakness of the New York Jets. And finally, to the Patriots, they're one of the worst teams in football. Do they have a strength? Well, yes, they do have a strength. Defense is above average. They are. I mean, they were, in terms of yards allowed, they were top 5 in the NFL in a good way, or I guess you could say bottom 5 in yards allowed, so that's good. They were top half of the league in terms of points allowed, or top half of the league in terms of points allowed. Jerome Mayo's the defensive coach. He's taken a lot of what Belichick taught him as kind of his protege. The Patriots almost always have a good defense. It's offensively where they're bad, and that moves us to the weakness of the Patriots is Ohio State probably has a more talented offense. Honest to God, Ohio State has a first-round receiver that's maybe a top 5 pick. They've got a really good court. Ohio State's really, really loaded offensively. I'd say half of their skill position guys, receivers, tight ends, running backs, would start for the Patriots today. It's bad. Listen, nothing against Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, but if that's what you're feeling out there, by the way, with one of the worst quarterback rooms in the league, you're going to be a pretty bad football team. So that's the biggest weakness of one of the worst teams in the league, the New England Patriots. To the Dallas Cowboys, what's their biggest strength? Well, assuming CeeDee Lamb signed, by the way, Dak and Lamb are the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the NFL. That goes without saying. We know what Dallas can do in terms of scoring points with Dak, with CeeDee Lamb, despite questionable bad play calling with Kellen Moore and at times suspect play calling with Mike McCarthy. They've got one of the best offenses in terms of scoring, offensively in terms of scoring points. They tend to average over 30 a game. CeeDee Lamb just had 1,700 yards receiving. Dak Prescott nearly won league MVP. Those two guys are great. The problem is for the Cowboys, and this transitions us into their biggest weakness, is no run game and minimal wide receiver depth beyond Lamb. I talked about this in Carving Up the Context. I'll put the clip on YouTube. Is the fact that CeeDee Lamb is amazing and is literally, check the numbers in the Carving Up the Context segment, literally better than every single other receiver on the Cowboys combined, put together. He's a far better receiver than all of those guys. And if he's gone, if the holdout continues into the season, Dallas could genuinely be a bottom half league offense this season after being one of the best in the league, because it's CeeDee Lamb, and that's where it is. And by the way, as far as the run game, Ezekiel Elliott, cool dude, love him. He's not the 2016 Ezekiel Elliott. Hasn't had a great season, I think, in like 6 years since 2018. Last time I believe he was a Pro Bowler. And then Rico Dowdle. What did Bill Parcells say? Just a guy. He's a Jag. He's a Jag. Ezekiel Elliott at this point is a Jag. By the way, the offensive line didn't get better in the offseason. They added BB. They added some other guys in the draft. We'll see if they're able to pan out. By and large, I don't like the Cowboys offense whatsoever if CeeDee Lamb is not there, and Dak will be working with next to nothing. So that's the biggest weakness of the Dallas Cowboys. To the Philadelphia Eagles, their biggest strength is O-line is still one of the strongest units in the league. Now, they did lose Jason Kelce, which first ballot Hall of Famer, no question about that. And that will potentially haunt them as the season goes on. But is Lane Johnson still there? Is the best right tackle, second best right tackle to Penei Sewell in the NFL. The guy is rock solid, has been his entire time in Philadelphia. And that's what really fuels Philly's offense, is the run game with Jalen Hurts. They added Saquon Barkley. That is, with San Francisco, their running game works because Kyle Shanahan's run designs are second to none. The guy's brilliant at that. Philadelphia's got a great running game and have been for a long time with Miles Sanders, with DeAndre Swift, now assuming with Saquon Barkley, because their offensive line just punch you in the face and maul you. I mean, they are as physically dominant up front as any team in football. That will help them win a lot of games this year and potentially make the playoffs once again. The biggest weakness, though, for the Philadelphia Eagles is the coaching staff's below average at best. It's below average. Okay, so Nick Sirianni, we know what happened at the end of the year. We know the report that came out recently from Jeremy Fowler, talking about how the quarterback and coach don't even really like each other that much, don't really respect each other. Certainly Hurts doesn't really respect Sirianni. This is a guy who's coached, by the way, by his dad, Nick Saban, and Lincoln Riley. The guy knows what good coaching looks like, and he doesn't respect Sirianni. Yeah, the fact that Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator. In Dallas, Dak had his worst year with Kellen Moore, came back the next year and almost won the MVP. Justin Herbert was always really, really good and had his worst season with Kellen Moore calling plays. For Jalen Hurts, listen, again, I will always hate the Eagles. I feel bad for Hurts. I like Hurts. He doesn't deserve to have to put up with curl routes on 3rd and 11. It's a poor guy. I feel bad for him. So listen, I don't think Philadelphia has a great coaching staff, and that's going to do them in over the course of the 17-game season and potentially the playoffs. To the New York Football Giants, their biggest strength is Dable gets the most out of every quarterback. I've heard Brian Dable. Brian Dable's on the hot seat. Why? Daniel Jones does not get the worst contract in the league relative to the players' on-field contributions without Brian Dable. And by the way, Daniel Jones throws 15 touchdown passes, and that got him $40 million, but won a playoff game. Brian Dable won a playoff game with Daniel Jones. By the way, a season ago when Daniel Jones went down, Tyrod Taylor productive. Some guy named Tommy DeVito, who I think is a character in Goodfellas, literally. Doing this, and he's got his family in the stands and his agent and beating the Packers on Monday Night Football. Brian Dable got the most out of him. By the way, with lesser receiving cores then than they have now. They added Malik Neighbors. The last time people thought, I'd say the most people thought at the time that, hey, Josh Allen might be better than Patrick Mahomes. His coordinator was Brian Dable. The guy works with quarterbacks as well as anybody. If he gets fired from the Giants this season, he'll be one of the first quarterbacks off the market in what's sure to be a loaded coaching pool of candidates in 2025. The biggest weakness of the Giants, though, is pretty simple. They're severely limited at quarterback. Nothing against Daniel Jones. The beard looks good on him. I think he should keep the beard. But ditch getting into fights with other teams' players. That's not smart. Listen, Daniel's accurate, and that's pretty much where it ends. I'm sorry, I'm athletic, and that's where it ends. Accuracy comes and goes. Decision-making is poor. Again, the interception, the fumbles used to be a problem. Now the interceptions are a problem. There's only so much Brian Dable can do with a guy who's severely limited. I think it speaks for itself. It's why the Giants have been pretty bad, really, since Eli retired. And even at the end of Eli's career. It's very Los Angeles Lakers-esque. So that's the biggest weakness for the Giants. Finally, the Washington Commanders, their biggest strength is Terry McLaurin is a capable quarterback. Who knew? God bless him. Listen, Terry McLaurin, I think he's one of the best receivers in the league. The fact that he's put up the numbers he has with a horrible quarterback play is a credit to him. Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, they trotted him out last year. They've tried a lot of quarterback, solutions, air quotes, in Washington. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to work or not. I like him more than most. I shouldn't say more than most. I think he was deserving of being the second overall pick. Athleticism, love it. Arm strength, love it. Accuracy consistently needs to continue to improve. But it's the best quarterback Terry McLaurin's ever had. I can say that pretty confidently, although that isn't saying much given what Washington has fielded. So, and by the way, I like the Commanders coaching staff with Dan Quinn, with who's the opposite coordinator? Cliff Kingsbury. I like what they have over there, and I think Washington's going to build a pretty solid football team, especially the fact that Dan Snyder's out of the way and they have new ownership. But the biggest weakness of the Washington Commanders is the O-line's bad. O-line is simply bad. Pro Football Focus has them as the 27th ranked one in the league. They tried to address it in the draft, adding Tyler Biadasz in the offseason. But a year ago, folks, Sam Howell was sacked 65 times. It was the worst O-line in the league last year. It should improve a little, surely to goodness, this year, especially with the more athletic quarterback and Jaden Daniels. Other than that, it's pretty weak. And again, Washington defensively. All right. We'll do some comments right here. Do we have it? Jeff, hot take. The Bills' biggest error is Sean McDermott is simply not a good coach. He was a solid DC for the Panthers, but his defense for the Bills has cost him every playoff game. And he fails to make in-game adjustments. And WTF was that call he made last year against the Chiefs in the divisional with Damar Hamlin. Like, WTF are you doing, dude? That was a really, really questionable call. I can name 10 to 12 coaches I'd rather have than Sean McDermott. Oh, wow. We just have breaking news during that segment. Matthew Judon just talked about the Patriots. They have a great defense. I don't know. Traded to the Atlanta Falcons. Matthew Judon has been traded to the Falcons for a 2025 third-round pick. Look at that. So this is from Schefter. Breaking news at the end of Carving It Up. Atlanta has been seeking a pass rusher for a while, previously trying to trade for Montez Sweat before last year's trade deadline, then trying to trade it for UCLA's Laiatu Latu in April's draft. Today, they acquire Matthew Judon from New England for a third-round pick. Wow. Shoot, I mean, that was like the best player on their team. Patriots might win 2 games next year. I'm not kidding. That is yikes. So evidently they couldn't get that contract done. Judon didn't really, you could argue Judon's somewhat held in, not in the way Brandon Ayuk has with the Niners, but wow. Atlanta just got a lot better defensively. And Atlanta, I've always thought, has had a pretty solid defense the last couple of years. They've really addressed it in the draft and free agency to improve outside the ball. Now they get one of the premier pass rushers in the league. Well, listen, Atlanta's going for it. I respect them for it. So we'll see what they do. All right. So this is the last show we're going to be doing until August 26th. So I'm not going to be here on Friday, and I'm not going to be here throughout next week. However, the good news is when I come back, August 26th, knock on wood, it's always the goal before every year. We were able to achieve it last season, hope to achieve it this year. We hope to not miss a single solitary show over the course of the entire NFL and college football season. So hopefully from late August to late February, 6 months, we're going to be right here on Carving It Up, giving you nothing but nonstop NFL, college football, NBA, the whole bit, but obviously spearheaded by the king of television, the National Football League. And college football's, you could argue it's the prince of television. They get big ratings as well. So there you go. All right. That said, I'll see you in 12 days. That is all the time here for today's episode of Carving Up Live. Be sure to tune in on on August 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time right here on Twitter as well. Facebook, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. Be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. That's the next goal. Let's shoot for the stars. You might as well. What's the point in being conservative with it? So shoot for 5,000. So if you have subscribed, thank you so much. We appreciate it greatly. Me and as well as everybody involved with Carving It Up. Please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about the show other than your sleeping cat. Nealon has been, I know I said this on Monday, dude has been talkative as of late. He goes through these stretches where he does not stop talking. Man, I love him. He's the best little buddy in the world. But outside of your sleeping cat, tell everybody you know about Carving Up Live. If you have not subscribed, hey, just takes a couple seconds, 2 seconds. That's all it takes. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. Helps the channel grow exponentially. And just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts. You can find us the Grid Network, where we dare to be different. All right, August 26th, I'll be back, ready to go. The week of college football beginning. Oh, I cannot wait. So until then, please stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. It doesn't matter where you lean, right, left, center. This is an issue that impacts every single one of us as American citizens on a day-to-day basis. No matter what anybody on either side of the aisle tries to gaslight you on, oh, it's not a problem. Oh, there's only one solution to the problem. Both are not true. Both are BS. It's a huge problem that needs a number of complex, nuanced solutions to address it. And especially this being an election year, if anyone on either side of the aisle shows no inclination to address it, either vote them out or vote against them, because we got to get this thing solved soon. All right. See you in a couple of weeks. Monday, August 26th. I'll be back. I'll be ready to go. By the way, the Vol View is going to be on that week. Come on now. I'm wearing a Tennessee shirt today, baby. Let's go. See you then. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Football's almost here, baby. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.